And now it's about how do we design for all the individual users and truly design for those users that are going to be in the space, right? Which means a diversity of settings.
Hello and welcome everyone to today's session. In this session, we're going to talk about designing for tomorrow's comfort. But before we get to the conversation, first let me introduce myself. My name is Pascal van Dort, working for Rockfon as Global Acoustics Ambassador. And today I have the privilege to have a conversation with our very special guest, Collin Burry. Welcome, Collin. Collin is design director at Gensler, a worldwide architectural firm, planning also, with more than 6,000 people worldwide. And one of them we have here. So welcome, Collin.
Well, I guess first and foremost, thank you to Rockfon and to Lynn and the others at Rockfon and Pascal for having me here. It's great to be here, and it's great to see so many happy faces out in the audience, and hopefully you're enjoying 3 days of design. It looks like it's very well attended this year, which is amazing. Yep. Obviously, there's a big draw coming to this incredible city called Copenhagen. So anyway, thank you for having me. So I would define well-being maybe by kind of going backwards for a little bit. I've been in this career now for really since I graduated from university, like a lot of years, like a long, long time. And so I've seen a lot of change, and the change is constant, which is one of the reasons that I love this industry, is because we never know what's next, and we're going through some pretty major things at the moment. But in terms of well-being, I think kind of going backwards, especially, I'm mostly a workplace designer. I mean, I've designed products in airports and showrooms and other kinds of things as well, but mostly workplace. And it used to be that the world of workplace was designed not so much for the user, even though we would say that. It was really designed for the facilities managers and for the real estate people, for them to be able to make the space easy to manage, right? Oftentimes those people were men. So there was really never sort of, as much sort of sensitivity around gender diversity, et cetera, right? The era of universal planning, if I say that, does everybody know what that means? Is essentially like one size fits all. Everyone way back in the day would get like, a 2.5 meter by 2.5 meter cube. And that was your workspace, or in Europe, it might've been like a little bit smaller space or whatever. But that had nothing to do with sort of the user experience. So what I would say well-being is really sensitivity to every one of our needs, whether that be, neurological differences, gender differences, physical differences. I had double hip replacement surgery a couple of years ago. And just to give an example, I couldn't reach the glasses. All of our joinery and our cabinetry in our office in London was low. And the bottom shelf, if all the glasses in the front went out, I couldn't reach. So because I couldn't bend down actually to be able to get a glass. So, it made me very acutely sensitive to how, poorly designed many of the workspaces that we have are for all different peoples of all different physical sort of needs, et cetera. So to me, it's a frictionless environment that accommodates everybody, right? No matter your gender, neurodiversity, physical condition, et cetera, et cetera.
Maybe not really related to well-being, but how did you get into the world of interior design?
Good question. So it was the one time I'd listened to my mother. And originally I wanted to be an architect. And I went in Canada, growing up in Canada, you had to have a bachelor's degree in order to study architecture. So my mother suggested that I study interior design. And I got into a few different universities, one in Winnipeg and one in Los Angeles and one in the East Coast of the US. And, being a young man, I chose LA, who doesn't want beach and, warm weather. So I chose LA, and I kind of fell in love. We would share studios with the USC, University of Southern California, with their architecture program. And, I learned that, their projects take 5 years or longer to build. In interiors, it was more like 6 months to a year. And so I kind of was hooked, and I loved the industry, and I really haven't looked back. It's been an absolutely amazing journey.
Yeah, I can tell the audience it's already more than 27 years that he is in this business. So, but it's good to see that you enjoy it. So we talked about well-being, and the next question: what are some of the key elements that enhance user well-being in interior design?
I think it's sort of going back to the idea of it being a frictionless environment. I think some of the things that we see a lot of today are providing spaces that really accommodate, again, our different needs, right? Whether they be prayer rooms, mothers' rooms for the mothers that are nursing, well-being rooms, for people to get migraines, et cetera, or other types of conditions. If you're not feeling well, a place to lay down. Sometimes we just all need a nap in the middle of the day. Again, I think it's like being really specific about, accommodating for everybody. It's not one size fits all. And so we really do need to be sensitive to everybody's individual needs.
How do you handle that challenge?
I mean, it's a really good question, because I think, again, our world, having gone from one size fits all to now what it is today, is designing today is very complicated. We need to know a lot about a lot of different things, whether it be some of the conditions we just talked about, or, from a sustainability perspective, which we're going to get to in a second. There's a ton to know. So I think we just all need to keep doing things like this, educating each other. We're all collectively in this together, and I think we have a big challenge and charge ahead of us.
How do you experience these elements in the design? Because I think you have to handle them all equally, or is there one or two that you say, well, that's more important than color use or lighting? Or
I think they're all important, right? And I think acoustics, maybe there wasn't quite as much sensitivity to it a few years ago as there is now. In a world where a lot of our meetings are virtual, right? In the meeting rooms that are the places that we're in, there's a lot of sound noise, a lot, right? And so I think we've all been in those meeting rooms that have an echo, or we're on a call with someone, like a virtual call, like a Teams call or Zoom call, and there's echo in the room, the people, on the other side. So obviously, products like this, these amazing products or whatever, really do, I think they become more important than ever. It used to be that they were the easy thing to eliminate from projects, and we're actually sort of seeing clients doubling down and investing in acoustics. Lighting's always been there, especially temperature. We all, some of us like to run hotter, some of us are cold all the time, right? And that's probably the biggest challenge still. There's been like the Edge in Amsterdam, for example, they tried to, have individual comfort, which sounded amazing, right? And then I have a friend that worked there and he said it sucked, right? Because, there's no way that you can sort of micro acclimate a certain portion, a 2 meter by 2 meter space when someone next to you likes to be super hot or whatever, right? Yeah. So anyway, I think that continues to be one of our biggest challenges is sort of thermal control, but getting better and better.
So what innovations, whether across materials, technology, or general knowledge, do you believe hold the most significant impact on user well-being?
This is an area where I think we're about to experience, I lived in San Francisco for 25 years, right? And, having a front row seat to the innovation economy, seeing the rise of like things like Wi-Fi that at the time seemed like, oh my gosh, you mentioned Nokia earlier, that the guy from Nokia invented, Bluetooth or whatever, so, I was there, right? I got to experience, I got to see that, right? We worked at Facebook since they were, like 50 people or 100 people or something like that, right? And now, I was just watching a thing on BBC this morning where they took these kids' cell phones away or their mobile phones away for 2 weeks, right? And they were completely freaking out. Oh. Yeah, they had no idea how to exist in the world, So anyway, technology is going faster and faster and faster. And of course, I think everybody right now is talking a lot about artificial intelligence, and we're only starting to scratch the surface in terms of what that really means for our industry. And I think there's a lot of change there. But, I think some of the things that we're doing at Gensler are, I think we're trying to innovate in terms of the process. So we have a program called GPS, which is the Gensler product system, which isn't trying to mandate in any way what we do, because obviously each client is different and the needs of each client are different and the types of spaces that we design are different. But it's trying to kind of use our specification clout as an organization to hopefully change the industry, right? To help manufacturers and everyone sort of focus on the things that matter, which are around, lower carbon, obviously, low VOCs, and recycled content, et cetera. So there's the three factors that we put products through. And then we're trying to automate that system. So, and this is sort of where AI and some of the other technologies come in, where we just completely, I wish Blanca was here. She was supposed to be our resource librarian in London, kind of call her out. But, she and this other woman, Maria, led this effort to completely green our library. So anything that was not sustainable or sort of met the GPS standards is gone. The other thing we did is we added a QR code to every single material. with the goal being that a designer would scan the code, that information could go immediately into Revit. Revit, with some add-on plugin softwares and things like that. Well, we're not there yet. This is still very much in development, so I'll kind of get a sneak peek. We'll automate basically tracking carbon, because I think we're starting to see our clients maybe migrating. Some are all in for the certifications, and some are like, they really, they find it too limiting to do well or to do some of the other things. So
can you give an example of that?
Without reaching confidentiality stuff.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. We work with a lot of really interesting clients, but confidentiality has become more important than ever. So there's a project right now we're doing for a entertainment streaming company, and they're focused on completely in Berlin, and their challenge to us was to try to save 30% carbon. And so, and it was really hard, I have to say. It was really, I think we got to 20, but to get to that extra step would have been really, really hard. And that involved, reuse of furniture, reuse of products, trying to find used products, whether it be light fixtures or the kinds of things. There was this amazing company in Berlin that sort of takes buildings that are being demolished and takes door handles and toilets and, everything that's sort of coming out, and then offering them for sale, resale back on the market. So I think, they didn't want to go for WELL. They didn't want to go for LEED. They already, from a WELL perspective, they already do a lot of the right things anyway, right? So for them, the lowest common denominator was sort of focusing and targeting carbon.
Yeah. Well, we already talked about yesterday with a short conversation, and you said, when I asked how is Gensler handling like the green building certification schemes like LEED, BREEAM, WELL, and so on, and you said it's getting less. And I was surprised by that. And when I asked you why, you said it's because carbon neutral is becoming more important.
Yeah. So, and again, I don't want to devalue all those certifications.
No, because, but it's just
they're really, really important.
Yeah.
Arthur Gensler was on the US GBC, the US Green Building Council. He was one of the founding members, and actually, we did one of the first sustainable projects in the Bay Area, and we had no idea what we were doing, like none, right? So this woman, Melissa Meisel, had a spreadsheet. So she did her research, and she sort of went out in the world and tried to figure out everything she possibly could to say, okay, if a client is asking us, we were designing the new space for the Gordon Biddy Moore Foundation. He was one of the founders of Intel. And they wanted, one of their pillars where they were getting their money was on the environment, right? So the space had to be designed sustainably, and no one really knew how to do it. But that spreadsheet became part of what became LEED, which now, is quite ubiquitous. But, without that certification, I don't know if the world really would have paid attention, right? So they're incredibly important, and WELL kind of like took it to the next level, right? Yeah. So I don't want to diminish their value, for those of you that might be involved in those organizations. I mean, they're incredibly important, but I think as an industry, that's one thing, one tool that we have, potentially is carbon, and some of these, are carbon, basic measuring carbon, right? Is that another tool that may be a little bit easier for us to collectively to wrap our heads around?
Yeah. What changes in workplace design do you think will have the most significant impact in the next decade when you talk about specific the future of work?
I love this question, because it's like, I think for those of you that do workplace design, we're living this huge radical change right, at this moment, right? I mean, it's happening right now, right? The pandemic, a lot of this was already starting to happen sort of pre-pandemic, but it was kind of spotty in terms of whether clients were into it or not. But, I think it kind of got put on steroids and fast-tracked with the pandemic. We all immediately sort of had to work really, really differently. So the future of work is really, today, is about providing this diversity of settings with the umbrella of sustainability, of well-being, of inclusion, all the, productivity, et cetera, all those things, the new ways of working in terms of like, obviously work from home, et cetera, giving people the flexibility. That means that there is this radical change in terms of the physical spaces we're designing, right? And it's fascinating because it's like, right now I'm a design guardian for one of our global relationships, and watching designers across the globe try to kind of figure out how to work in this new way is challenging, right? Because again, it was sort of like one size fits all. Here's a program, here's the brief. You do the space plan. You lay out a bunch rows of workstations or desks or whatever, and here's some meeting rooms. Here's some of this or whatever, and you're done, right? And now it's about how do we design for all the individual users and truly design for those users that are going to be in the space, right? Which means a diversity of settings.
Yeah.
So even the way you program is incredibly difficult because you really have to understand the profile of the people that are using the space and what their outcome is, then their individual needs as well, right? And then provide this whole diverse array of settings. And there's not enough information yet to know if, what exactly the right metrics are. The model that existed, the workplace model that existed probably for the last 30 to 40 years is out the window. So we all kind of knew, in order, this kind of company needs this, based on benchmarking, this kind of company needs that. But now it's, we're sort of in this brave new world, and hopefully tools like AI will kind of help take us there in terms of really knowing what does and doesn't work.
Because Gensler also has its own research department. Are you also doing research on the future of work, although the future is today?
Absolutely. Yeah, we actually have a very robust, we actually take a significant portion of our profits and plow them back into research. And what's cool about it is it's actually anybody in the organization can actually submit a grant, and they're allotted an amount of money. And they can, draw upon that money to do their research. And so there's been some really amazing things that have come out of that. So absolutely.
Do we need to let go of any personal comfort to build more sustainable?
I mean, to me, they go hand in glove, right? Like I don't think it's about having less personal comfort, right? It's about, isn't it more comfortable being in a space that was designed responsibly for the planet, right? To me, it's sort of a no-brainer. It's like, I do think though there's a case for ugly in architecture and design. And if you think about products that are grown, like mycelium products, right, or natural products, things that aren't as processed, things that aren't as sealed and other kinds of things, so it's sort of like, and I actually kind of want to write a white paper on this, but it's like, there needs to be a case for ugly in architecture and design, because it's like everything needs to be precious, right? You need, especially in the US, right? It's like, stone needs to look, the same on day, 8 years after they've moved in is the day that they moved in. Other surfaces need to look the same, but the reality is that things do patina and they age, and I think Europeans are a little bit more accepting of that, right? Just because of the nature of, we live in older cities and you see the patina of age, right? Which you've sort of come to embrace and love. But when you live in a really new place and everything's new and shiny or whatever, you sort of, come to expect that. But it's like, I think we need to sort of embrace ugly, right? So this project in Berlin, we're reusing a lot of their furniture. We're actually buying a lot of used furniture. We actually went out and found matching desks, which was kind of a fluke that they were actually available. But, we need to embrace new thinking, which means that everything doesn't have to be new. Everything doesn't need to be perfect. Everything doesn't need to be whatever the moniker is in order for it to be great design, right? And I think we all have to collectively sort of embrace the fact that it's not going to be the same way that we designed it in the past.
No, but what if this reused furniture is not very comfortable? But you can say to the client, yeah, but it's very sustainable. Then you let go a bit of.
Well, that process happened on this project where the client was like, "We're using this. We don't like that." So that absolutely happened. But we reused it absolutely as much as we possibly could.
Yeah.
So again, I think as designers, we all sort of want everything to be, our signature and our whatever. But the reality is that maybe we need to let go of some of that.
Yeah. And this is hopping a little bit already in the discussion that we have. Can we truly build for our basic human needs and the pressing urgencies of the environment?
I think the other radical change I think that needs to happen is, if we think about it, is the whole system of building something is as it's been for a long time, if not centuries, right? But in modern history, at least 100 years, something like that, right? And that system is not, and the products that are, that are sustainable and green or whatever are feeding into that system. So they're being designed to go into a construction specification and construction sort of method that has existed for a long time. Instead of us collectively completely rethinking the entire system of building, right? So, some examples might be, well, actually coming here, that would be in the taxi, I saw quite a few mass timber buildings that were being built, which was amazing to see. It seems like Denmark's kind of leading the way, maybe in some ways in this world or in that reality. And I think that's a really good example. Things that are modular, they're built in a factory where there potentially could be lower waste. They can be built more efficiently and then moved on site and then kind of assembled. That might be another example. But the whole system, especially for interiors, is just sort of as it's been. And we've all been to construction sites. You see the huge, ginormous bins with studs and plasterboard, leftover materials, whatever it might be, right? I mean, that is incredibly wasteful. It's sort of like food waste, right? We're focused on food waste, but why aren't we focused on construction waste and some of the other things? And there are places, obviously, in the world where, like in California, where I came from, like where construction debris is a big no-no, and you have to pay for it to be removed. And what is removed then has to all be sorted, et cetera. So there's definitely, but again, that's still the old system. Right? So how do we completely rethink the system to build in a way that is sustainable, right? And again, we don't know exactly what that will be, but for the earlier career people out there in the audience, is sort of a challenge to you to really rethink that. Unfortunately, it's contractors, PMs, architects, designers, the manufacturers. We're all kind of part of an old system at the moment, and we all need to sort of figure out a new system, in my opinion.
So what role do you think that a designer should play in advocating for sustainable building practices?
I mean, some of this we've already kind of covered, but I think we collectively in our industry, I think the figures we contribute 40% of carbon from our industry, right, to the environment. That is the highest. And if we don't take responsibility, who is going to take responsibility, right? And it's hard, right? Clients are under a lot of pressure. I feel sorry for these teams, especially these days, right? With inflation and everything that's happening, they're responsible for a budget and a schedule and the other kinds of things, the performance of the space at the end of it and people being happy and, the performance, et cetera. It's I don't envy needing to do that, but it's like, if we don't want to over push. And over, force, break them, right? Arthur Gensler always said, stretch your clients. It's like a rubber band, stretch them, but don't break the rubber band, right? And I do think we need to be collectively stretching our clients, right? And educating them. Otherwise, if we don't do it, who's going to do it, right? Yes. And when a client comes to you and says, well, that's too expensive or whatever. It's it's a little bit easier in base building work because you can actually quantify, if you use this mechanical system, you're going to save this much energy, which over the life of the building is going to save you this much money, right? So of course it does require an initial bigger upfront investment. Interiors, that's really harder to quantify, really hard, right? Because how do you say that, that mycelium grown acoustic product is, it is a little bit more expensive, but it's going to enhance your business enterprise. Is it? I mean, hopefully it is because you've done the right thing, and so it's one of these things where we're really all in this together, right? And that's the other thing is how do we kind of get out of this mindset of there's the planet and then there's us, it's we are all, I actually think in Canada, we call them the First Nations people, the people that inhabited the earth, or the lands there before we did, they were in harmony with nature. They knew how to live with the animals. They knew how to take the natural resources that were adjacent, that they were in their environment and sort of harvest them for the betterment of their thriving, but they also respected the earth, right? And they saw Mother Earth as, as this place that was almost godlike, right? And had a soul. And somehow I think because of modern society and our mobile phones and the other kinds of things, we're a little bit detached from the reality of the earth that we live in, right? And how do we collectively see ourselves as part of this ecosystem and not better or more than or more intelligent or whatever than a bee or,
It's true. And I also think that, we all know the urge of having a sustainable built environment that we all know already, but how, that is still work in progress, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Are there any emerging opportunities or technologies that you believe can dramatically improve interior design efficiency?
It's a buzzword at the moment, but artificial intelligence or AI, I think we've all heard a lot about it. But again, like coming from the Bay Area and sort of seeing, you see the pluses and the minuses, right? You see the amazing things that social media has done in terms of connecting us all, but then you also see, people that are really struggling because they feel lesser than for some reason because they're seeing all these beautiful things and amazing lifestyles and whatever, and they don't feel like they have that. So, it's harder than ever in some ways to be a human and to be really kind of true to yourself and just, to feel strong, and AI kind of probably, I think everyone's a little bit afraid of it, but the reality is if we can use machine learning and artificial intelligence to do a better job of what we're doing, and it's actually measurable, which AI hopefully will allow us to do, then some of the things like going back to sort of the discussion around, base building architecture is easier to measure the energy use or whatever, but in interiors is more difficult. Hopefully we're going to really understand that what people really need in order for them to be effective, how do we do more with less, and how do we use this intelligence to better the world, right? And personally, I don't think it's something to be afraid of. I'm actually quite excited about it. When I'm listening to Spotify, and all of a sudden it creates this playlist for me, it's like, wow, that's really cool. Because it's all, it's like somehow it's music I've never heard of, artists I've never heard of, but it knew that I was going to like it because of my listening history, right? I think that's a good thing, and in some ways makes our lives that much easier. So, I'm actually super excited about artificial intelligence, but.
Do you already use within Gensler AI and how?
Increasingly more and more. And actually we have a whole team that's really focused on, some of the low hanging fruit that we've probably all seen, are visuals, which also is a sort of challenge, I think, collectively to our industry is like, anybody can spit a whole bunch of, images of projects or whatever into a computer, and AI, out the other end comes this very, very realistic looking thing. You want Spanish colonial from 1952 or whatever, and all of a sudden there's Spanish colonial from 1952, right? It's kind of amazing. What it doesn't do is that every time you change one of those sort of parameters that you put into it, it creates an entirely new image. And for what we do, we still need the ability to affect different elements and to kind of keep the initial image intact, if that makes sense, right? So some of our efforts are really around that. So I think, again, it's gonna radically change how we design. Again, it could be scary because it could take a lot of people's jobs away, but those jobs will probably become other jobs, right? If we go back to sort of the Industrial Revolution, the jobs of then are completely different today, right? And so I think we're about to undergo the same thing. The hard part is we're all going to have to live through it and sort of witness the change and hopefully, embrace it and try to advocate for the right things and the right outcomes.
Don't you think that there's a downside that, with this, everyone could be an interior designer? Just ask artificial intelligence and bam, there's the design.
I love that question. And the reason is, I don't think that the human brain and creativity is ever going to go anywhere, right? So people that design by Pinterest or people that design by Instagram, when you take and you copy someone else's project, AI will do that for us now, right? So what value are we adding, right? So I push our designers to be original and have original thinking. Clients are the best source of inspiration. They're all different. They all have different backgrounds, even law firms, they all have their own sort of unique attributes and personalities, even though sort of what they do and the sort of formula for a law firm from a design perspective is quite the same. So I think we need to challenge ourselves not to just look at a Pinterest page and say, oh, I like that, that bar, so I'm going to copy it and put it in this project that I'm doing. AI is going to do that for us, right? So what's the value that we bring? And to me, that's the creativity that only can come out of a human brain. And so it's actually going to push us even higher upstream if we embrace it. If we're not careful, we're going to collectively, I think, as an industry, sort of lose our position in that because it will just be done by a machine, right? Yeah. So we need to stay like laser focused on the value that we bring.
We will see what the future will bring with it. Yeah. when it comes to that. Can you name 3 brands, companies within workplace well-being field that you work with? Please explain why do you think they deserve to be in the top 3? Can be furniture, product, services, etc.
I mean, I think there are companies that are definitely doing the right thing. I mean, I think many of the Danish companies, frankly, have been doing the right thing for a really long time, staying focused on not only well-being, but sustainability. Um, so it's kind of hard because I feel like every company right now is really striving. I don't think, whether it be architecture or design or product manufacturer, I don't think the companies of the future are going to thrive without having that inherently built into what we do, right? So, yeah, so I wouldn't call any specific one out. It's
Well,
like picking your favorite child or something, but yeah.
what piece of advice would you give to designers that are just entering the industry? What is the advice that you want to give them?
I love this question because I was really, really, really fortunate throughout my entire career to have incredible mentors. And don't be afraid to ask. Ask for help. Like don't pretend you know it all because you don't. I learn every
Or
day.
maybe don't ask AI for help.
Well, start there.
Start there.
ChatGPT is pretty amazing, but yeah, it is actually kind of amazing, right? Someone's like, wow. But yeah, I think it's like don't be afraid to ask for guidance, right? And then be your own true self. I think I think that's more important than ever, right? That we all are bringing our unique USP, into this world. Also, like, stay focused on just trying to do the right thing, in an area of social media where it's so easy to feel lesser than, I'm not as pretty, I'm not as skinny, I'm not name whatever, right? Like just be true to yourself and stay focused on being your best true self. This is an incredible industry, incredible. It's like, I have friends that work in all, whether it be tech or all different professions, and they're quite envious because I feel like we're in an industry where people actually have empathy. Because we put the users first. That has to be part of our job. So the way we see and experience the world is really, really different. We're like big sponges. I used to have a partner that used to say to me, he was an attorney, and he would always say, we go to a restaurant or something, and I was like picking up the chair, looking at the label to see if I could, because if I liked it, I made it. And he was always like, stop letting your environment attack you, But the reality was, I was just super curious, right? So stay curious. It will. I think you've joined an industry that no matter what part of it you're in is constantly evolving and changing and will keep you on your toes. And, I think I'm bullish about our future because of the young people. It's in your hands. A lot of these things that we're talking about well-being and sustainability, we're only scratching the surface. And I can't wait to see what all of you collectively come up with, because I know it's going to be amazing. And I know you take this responsibility really seriously.
In an increasingly urban world, how can it be feasible to introduce outdoor spaces into workplace design?
This is actually happening, especially warmer places, and not just warmer places. Again, like coming in here, I saw a lot of balconies and outdoor spaces. That's probably, Gensler does a workplace survey every year, and post-pandemic, one of the top responses in terms of what people wanted was access to outdoor space, which was a bit surprising, considering everything else that was on the list. And so we're seeing increasingly, even in high rises, very, very tall buildings, a focus on and value on providing those outdoor spaces. So it's happening, and that's really, I think, lies with the architecture community who are doing the base building work and designing these spaces, but they seem to be really embracing it. And the developers are kind of having to submit because it's such a priority for the users that they're trying to lease space to.
So there are manufacturers of mineral wool acoustic solutions, if I understand correctly, that are not that fire resistant, but they are chosen anyways in a project, something like that. And why is that then?
I mean, I'm going to guess it's a couple things. One is cost, maybe. Again, things are so... Acoustics is now pretty much mandatory in spaces, right? And again, it wasn't as quite...
Hopefully,
yeah. And given stresses on budget, et cetera, that they may be going for a cheaper solution. The other thing may be that there's a lot of amazing greenwashing out there, right? No rub to the carpet industry, but it's oil, right? Now one is oil. So it's like, but they wrap it in amazing marketing, right? And so I think it might be a combination of a few things, right? If there's even a few boxes that you could check as a designer when you're specifying something that makes you feel a little better about it from a sustainable standpoint, you'll probably use it you don't have time to dive into it more deeply and really understand. So that I think for the manufacturers out there, like educating people on the differences and what the real attributes are is more important than ever with all the greenwashing, et cetera. That's out there.
Because you mentioned the GPS system that you have within Gensler. So how do you look at different materials? If there is a really cool new material, but it doesn't have any certification whatsoever, then what do you do?
Certification, or it's not sustainable?
Well, maybe one of both.
I mean, that's the other thing, like that this world of resilience or sustainability is so complicated, right? When you start to unpack it, I think that's probably another thing that we need is sort of like product or nutrition labeling. Luckily, in most of the world, most countries now have some standard that all manufacturers or, food growers, et cetera, have to subscribe to. I kind of feel like our industry needs the same thing because there's so many different sort of competing interests. But again, we're all collectively living through this big change, and it will sort itself out.
But if there is a very, very sustainable solution for interior design, but it doesn't have any certification like sound absorption or fire classification whatsoever, do you then intend to use it or not? Or are you like,
probably not? No.
Probably not. No.
I mean, with the GPS, it's pretty clear. It's like low VOCs, recycled content, and carbon, right? So which theoretically should be relatively easy for the manufacturer to report. If it doesn't have one of those three or all three, then it probably doesn't make it.
Thank you for your participation. And then I meant for the audience, thank you much for being here. Thank you much for engaging in this conversation. And of course, a very big applause for our special guest, Collin Burry from Gensler.
Thank you for having me. Thanks, everybody.